They love to walk around in academic gowns, preening in the radiance of public flattery, basking in prominent positions, sitting at the head table at every church function. And all the time, they are exploiting the weak and helpless. The longer their prayers, the worse they get. But they'll pay for it in the end.
Let's look at each clause. Let's make sure that we have a solid understanding of grammar. And let's make sure a single sentence can only answer so many questions. This single sentence is not left alone. This single sentence exists in an entire book. And so the challenge is always to accurately handle what is in the sentence, but then to see how it relates to the entire context. The primary problem with cultic, unorthodox interpretation is simple. The demonstration of the truthfulness of the orthodox understanding is found in the fact that I will use the same method of exegesis, interpretation, and translation for John 1:1 that I use for any other verse in the Gospel of John, including verses that simply say that Jesus went from one place to another, verses that say that Jesus waited a certain number of days before going to raise Lazarus, for example. And the point is that the demonstration of divine truth will be found in its consistency throughout the text. And what you discover is that the people who try to come up with novel ways of looking at texts like this very often can't even translate another text in the Gospel of John, let alone anywhere else in the New Testament. I have encountered innumerable Jehovah's Witnesses who could tell you an amazing amount of stuff about a verse like this. Take them 2 chapters later and they're lost. Have no idea. Very few of them can actually teach and preach through the entirety of the Gospel of John or Mark or Luke or Matthew, for that matter. So, in the beginning was the Word. Now let's start with the beginning. A single sentence can only answer so many questions. This single sentence is not left alone. This single sentence exists in an entire book. So NRK and the vast majority of scholars will recognize that these are the same words that begin Genesis 1:1 in the Greek Septuagint. And so there is a understanding that John is referring to the same beginning that Genesis does. There are others who would want to try to limit this and say, well, it could be the beginning of the gospel, it could be the beginning of God's work with Israel, or whatever else it might be. But the fact that these are the same words used back in Genesis in the Greek translation is very, very important. Let's go ahead and look at logos for a second. Ha logos.